guys, my name is Amanda Clark. I'm the Assistant Director of Residential Admissions with A.T. Still University. My office is here at the Missouri campus, but I recruit and advise for all of our programs, both at the Missouri campus as well as our Arizona campus in Mesa. Tonight I have with me 2 medical students and 1 dental student. I try to get a second dental student, but David gets brownie points because they have an exam tomorrow, so we were lucky to be able to at least get 1. So as you guys have questions, please make sure that you type them in your chat box, and then we will get to them as we can. But again, like I said, my name is Amanda Clark. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so tell your name, what program you're in, what year, and then where you went to undergrad as well.
Sure. I'm David Hatch. I'm a second-year dental student here at the Missouri School of Dentistry and Oral Health here in Kirksville. And I'm from Arizona. I went and did my undergrad at the University of Arizona in Tucson.
I'm Brittany House. I'm originally from Chicago. I did undergrad at Cornell University in New York, and I'm a second-year DO student here at ATSU.
Hi, I'm Katie Horrigan. I'm also a second-year DO student at ATSU. I'm originally from Iowa, and I did my undergrad at Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa.
All right. So if we could have a quick survey, how many of you guys are interested in pre-med? You can either type it in. I can't really see you guys, but okay.
You can kind of read it.
Okay. Pre-dental? 7 pre-med. Okay. I'm sure we have some pre-dental too. So, well, that's just from the one. Okay. Okay. So what types of questions do you guys have? What are the main things that you guys want to focus on tonight? Do you want to, really just hear from them and what their typical day is like? Do you want to hear about the application cycle? While you guys are chatting that and what you really want to hear about, I'll tell you a little bit about A.T. Still University. In general. So A.T. Still University is a large umbrella university, and we have 6 individual schools that fall under that umbrella. So we have the Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine, which was the founding school of osteopathic medicine, and that's our DO program here at the Missouri campus, as well as our Master's of Biomedical Science program here at the Missouri campus. Also here in Kirksville, we have the Missouri School of Dentistry and Oral Health, which is our new dental program that just started up in 2013. We also have the College of Graduate Health Studies, which are our online programs like Masters of Public Health, Masters of Health Administration, Doctorate of Health Administration, and so on. And then at our Mesa, Arizona campus, we have the School of Osteopathic Medicine in Arizona, which is our DO program there. We have the Arizona School of Dentistry and Oral Health, which is our dental program there. And then we have the Arizona School of Health Sciences, which are our allied health programs like physician assistant studies, physical therapy, occupational therapy, audiology, and athletic training. For any program, any professional healthcare program that you'd be applying to, for the most part, you're going to have a primary application service that you have to do your primary application through. So your primary application are going to be things like your demographic information, your GPAs, your test scores, whether it's the MCAT, the GRE, or the DAT. You're going to send them your transcripts, and they're going to verify them and make sure everything looks correct. You'll list all of your extracurriculars, work experience, shadowing experience, community service, and then you'll have a personal statement with your primary application as well. And that's pretty much the same type of information that you're going to put in your primary application, whether it's for medical school, dental school, PA school, whichever program you're interested in. Once you do your primary application, then most schools and most programs will have you do a secondary application. The secondary application is specific to each individual school that you're applying to. So say, for instance, you were interested in either medicine or dentistry. If you're applying to both of our programs, say our dental program here in Missouri as well as our dental program in Arizona, you're going to have one primary application that's going to go to both of those programs. But then you're going to have a separate secondary for each of those programs. So you'll do one primary, but you may do as many as 10, 15, 20, depending on how many schools you want to apply to, that many secondary applications. You'll also have your letters of recommendation that you'll send in. You'll use the same letters of recommendation for all programs, so you don't have to have like 25 sets. Usually they're sent through Interfolio or some online service like that, or they go with the primary application as well. What questions do you guys have? No one has posted any chats about what types of questions that you guys are really interested in tonight. Okay. It might be, yeah. So, okay, let's, so what's your daily schedule like? Okay, great. So let's start with you, Dave.
Oh, okay.
Because you're closest. So talk about your experiences and what your typical day is like.
Sure. As a second year, my daily schedule involves a lot of preclinical work. We spend a lot of time in our sim clinic here in Kirksville. They spared no expense at our sim clinic here, and so we work on our mannequins a lot. Currently, we're involved making dentures and learning how to set teeth and provide proper occlusion or biting forces across the entire mouth for people who don't have any teeth. So that's kind of fun to, I shouldn't say fun because it's really challenging and frustrating, but it actually is a very, very good experience because it allows us to really understand how to help our patients. And I appreciate that a lot. We're also involved in a few other didactic classes as well as our certificate in public health. It's kind of in conjunction with our curriculum in dental school. We tend to focus on public health dentistry and what ways we can improve programs and resources and events and education in the public health sphere with dentistry. So we've kind of got our hands full of a lot of things right now, but I really enjoy it being a second year dental.
We're the DO students, so we'll just kind of touch on first year since that's what you'll have to do first. But for first year, you do a lot of your basic sciences. So your first 2 years are going to be your in the classroom learning. So you do anatomy, biochemistry, histology, a lot of anatomy first semester. You go into lab a lot of dissection, a lot of hours in there. So your morning will be pretty much 4 lectures from 8 to 12, and then you'll have some sort of lab in the afternoon. Pretty typical.
Yeah, that's the basic schedule for your first year. ATSU KCOM, what we do is a block system of testing too. So in your second semester of your first year, what you'll do is you'll come in and maybe you'll be learning about the GI system. So all of your classes will be tailored towards learning about the gastrointestinal system. And all of your anatomy labs will correlate with that as well. So first year, first semester though, is very, they call it basic sciences heavy, but there's nothing basic about it. It's pretty complicated, high level science learning, but it's still trying to get you ready then to apply it to different systems that you learn throughout the second part of your first year and now even into our second year. That's what we've been doing a lot of. ATSU also provides a lot of experiences for us in simulation clinics, sort of like what you guys get. We have full body robots that can pretty much do anything. It's sort of like you need to see it to believe it, but we've gotten experiences in there. And then we also have what we call SP encounters or standardized patient encounters. Like we just had one today. And so you go into a room that's set up exactly like a doctor's office and you get to work through that patient encounter just as you would in a clinic. And those opportunities come throughout your first year as well, besides just the classroom learning.
And so it's pretty safe to say that both of the schedules for dental and for DO is a full day?
Yes, full day.
So sometimes they might get out of class early if something wraps up early, but for the most part, going to professional healthcare school is going to be your full-time job. There's no extra time to fit in a couple hours of work here or there. When you're not in class or in lab, you're studying. Okay, good. Several questions on the way. Another question about the primary application, if you get it from the school. No, most programs or most professions have a primary application service. So you go to one website and they have the application right there that you fill out, and then they send it to all of the schools that you've listed with them that you're interested in applying to. So for instance, for DO programs, the primary applications go through AACOMAS, which is AACOMAS, and that stands for the American Association of Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine Application Service. And so a lot of them end in something AS. And so the DO program is AACOMAS. The dental program is ADSES. PA schools are CASPA. PT schools or PTCAS, OT schools or OTCAS. And so you can Google it, you can find those main websites, and then they'll have, the great thing about doing some research before you're actually ready to apply is that those websites, those application services will have a lot of information for all of the schools that take applications to them. So you'll be able to get on one site and find a lot of the requirements for many different DO programs or many different dental programs. And so it's always good to get on there and do your research ahead of time. Okay, so we have more questions come in. What are the interviews like? Okay, well, do you guys want to answer that, or do you want me to answer that?
We can answer.
You answer from your side, and then I'll answer from my side.
Sure.
Okay. Here at KCOM, we had almost a full day for our interview day. So we came in the morning, and if you had your interviews in the morning, then you're actually kind of lucky because you kind of got it out of the way. But then there's a lunch and a tour, and you might have an afternoon interview though. When we came in, we interviewed with 3 different people. So we interviewed with an admissions staff member, a faculty member, and then one additional one. So I interviewed with like the leader of the Aging Studies project here. But those were 3 half-an-hour interviews. I'd say that's similar in places I also interviewed at, but I can't speak to like the details of those, I guess.
Yeah, just kind of along the lines of how the interview is. What do they ask you, if that is kind of what the question is asking? I think they really just want you to be yourself. They ask you a lot of questions about the application that you originally filled out and ask you to elaborate on your experiences, whether they be research or outside the classroom, service projects, leadership activities, things like that, and why they were important to you. They also talk about your experience in healthcare, so whether you be applying to dental school or medical school. They want to know your experience and why you're interested in it, and kind of what brought you to the career path that you chose.
Yeah, and from my interviewing experience, and I guess I can kind of highlight what goes on at some different schools. Like these ladies had individual interviews with kind of a one-on-one. For the dental program, we were interviewed with 2 people in a very casual conversation, and we also had a group activity where we had people evaluating our behavior with our peers in a certain kind of stressful project, if you will, time constrained and whatnot. But that was so that they could see how we interact with our peers. Other schools, I remember interviewing at another school. I had a panel of 4 different people that were interviewing me and posing questions. So there is a variety of things that you can expect in the interview process. But I will say about an interview is that when you do get an interview, you're there for a reason. They think you're worthwhile to look at. So take confidence in that. Take confidence that they want to see who you are as a person. They want to see your strengths. They want you to know your weaknesses and where you can improve on them. They really want to see you as a person. It's a challenging thing to get through, but you do feel quite satisfied when you know you crushed an interview. It's good.
I guess it was sort of explained to me when I was applying is that your application, everything, your letters is getting your foot in the door, and then your interview is you're in the door. You're there to make a good impression and sort of let the school know like why they should pick you, because on your interview day, they're interviewing you while at the same time the school is trying to convince you to go there because they want you because you're a good candidate. And so they know at that level, once you've made it to the interview process, you're a competitive applicant, and they want you to be at their school and you hopefully want to be at theirs. So it's like a mutual thing.
That's all very true. The big thing about interviews, especially when you're prepping for interviews, is to get some interview experience under your belt. So whether that's going to your career center and doing mock interviews, or maybe your pre-health advisor, or a community service supervisor, or someone that you can practice mock interviewing with. And so, they don't even have to be asking you specific medical or dental school related questions, just to get that exposure and that practice on having someone ask you a question and being confident in giving your answer. Because a lot of the time, it's how you carry yourself, it's how you tell your story, and having confidence in yourself and being able to explain yourself in kind of a concise way. So like they mentioned, it is pretty true that, once you get an interview, it's almost, not totally, but it's almost like you have the spot to lose. And so another tip is that, you know, when it comes time and you are applying and you get those interviews, if you interview at a school but are not selected, chances are that's a fit issue where the school just didn't think that you were a good fit for them. And so for the most part, usually, unless you're put on a wait list, if you're flat out rejected, for the most part, if you interview at a school and are not selected, if you're rejected, then it's really not worth your time to go ahead and apply to that school the next cycle. So that's just a really unpleasant tip to keep in mind. Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah. But a lot of the times what faculty, staff, and everyone's looking for in an interview is really just to make sure that you are going into that field for the right reasons, that you're a good fit for that school. And especially in healthcare, that your patients are going to feel comfortable with you. So that's why it's good to have patient exposure. I think you're talking about competitive applications too in some of your questions, so we'll get to that as well. But you know, we're really looking to see who you are as a person, because we've seen everything on paper, but we want to see you as a person, how you interact, how you answer questions, how you handle things. And keep in mind that the whole interview day is part of your interview. So you need to be on the whole day. Don't get through your interviews and then when you go to lunch with the student ambassador, start acting like a fool or telling inappropriate stories or swearing or whatever, because that gets back to the admissions people making the decision. So your whole interview day is part of your interview. But also, like they said, your interview day is just as much for you to try the school as it is for the school to see what you're like as well. So you want to make sure you're going to feel comfortable there. So learn all you can kind of about that whole environment while you're there. So some of the other questions, how can I make my application competitive? Well, test scores are important, GPAs are important, you know, your academics are very important and they can't be ignored. They're a huge part of your application, but besides that, we look for well-rounded packages. So we aren't just looking for the sharpest tool in the shed, because sometimes those people who are so intelligent can't just sit down and chit-chat with someone. And so that's when we worry about how your patients will interact with you and how you'll explain difficult concepts to your patients. And so we look for someone who is strong academically but is personable and approachable. The patients are going to feel comfortable with them. We look for volunteerism, that you've given of your time, that you've donated your time and served others. We look for leadership experience, and we definitely look for patient care exposure. So we look for shadowing in the field that you're interested in going to, but we also look that you've had direct patient care exposure, because having direct patient care exposure prior to getting into medical or dental school or PA or PT or whatever really seals the deal for you. It makes you realize whether you're actually cut out for that. And so when you have already done that prior to applying, we know that you know what the field is going to call for, that you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you still want to do it. And that means that you're getting into it for the right reasons. And so you can't just have really high academics and really high scores and not have shadowing and patient care exposure and expect to get in. That is almost always a deal breaker. We want to see that that clinical side. So how was the MCAT and how did you prepare? That was the next question, and you can answer for the DAT as well. So MCAT.
The MCAT, I remember at the time, it was very daunting. It's pretty brutal test at that level. There are 3 sections, like you guys know. And medical schools are not just looking at your overall score, they're looking at your breakdown scores as well. And so I guess the MCAT it's just something that you kind of just have to like bear down and do it, sort of grind your way through it. But I did end up taking my MCAT twice. That's not like something to be necessarily ashamed of. If you think that you took it and you see your score and then you decide, you know, I think I can do better, it's not like a negative thing to go back and retake it again. Maybe it would be negative if you did worse on it, but I think for the most part, as long as you're trying to improve, you're doing it for a reason, and then that way, like, if you have those sort of like in your mind, if you are brought into an application process and somebody asks you, oh, why did you take the MCAT twice? I think as long as you have something prepared, and just to say like, well, I wasn't pleased with how I did and I wanted to better myself, so I took these steps and I did better. I think that's actually something that's pretty strong on your application. if you do decide.
And as a side note, you'll want to check with each school that you're applying to see which MCAT they'll take. So, for instance, KCOM will take your most recent score, whether it's better or worse.
Okay.
So, yeah, so, you know, you may take the score or take the exam. So, like, the new exam has a totally different scale than the old exam. So, say you take the new exam and you have, like, a 506 and you want to improve that. So, yeah, it's totally
Okay. I was like, oh my gosh.
And so,
No,
they're a few years removed from having to take the MCAT. So it changed totally and completely last year. And I think there are 4 sections now instead of just 3.
I think, yeah.
So say you took it and you got a 506 and you want to improve on that, so you retake it and you end up getting a 500. For KCOM, when we are saying this is the student's name, these are their GPAs, this is their MCAT, we are going to consider that 500. Now we're still going to see your other score, but for statistical purposes, that 500 is going to be what we go by. Many other schools will take your highest, so you'll just want to do your research and check with each school that you're interested in applying to find out which one they'll actually take.
Can I come on the
Yes.
preparation part? So part of the question was, how did you prepare for the MCAT? And I actually took a Kaplan course, so that's a very formal way to train, I guess, is kind of how I call it for the MCAT. I think the hardest part about the MCAT for me was definitely the length of the test. At my undergrad institution, the longest test I think I had to take was a final that was maybe 3 hours. And when you talk about how much longer the MCAT is, it's pretty significant. So when you talk about taking practice exams or formally testing for that or preparing for that, I think that's the most important part, because most of you, if you're thinking about applying to professional school, you know your GPA, you know your strengths and weaknesses, and the biggest part isn't going to be necessarily the material. It's going to be preparing for the length of that exam and preparing mentally for that exam.
The new MCAT is 8 hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the 8 hours,
Yeah.
I think then what they're trying to do for that is that the length of the time that you have for like these long tests, they're testing you to see how well you do in like a long period of time underneath that level of like mental stress, because our finals are 8 hours. Our block exams can be, 4 to 6. And so they're trying to prepare you for a professional level testing situation. So
The DAT, and do you know how long the DAT is? I don't know. It hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed.
I don't think it's changed.
I took it several years ago. When I took the DAT, I remember it being, I think it was a 400 question test. So it will take you about 4.5 to 5 hours maybe to take that, depending on, again, your testing style. But it is a very comprehensive test. I actually used MCAT materials to study for my DAT. They're actually very, very similar tests. Luckily, I got to skip physics though. And a unique part to the DAT is called the perceptual ability, and it judges. It's able to somewhat judge your ability to distinguish angles, to distinguish 3 dimensions, to distinguish just quick data accumulation to your eyes and how your mind perceives certain things. And it is a challenging section for a lot of people who maybe aren't accustomed to seeing those things. I have a lot of my peers are very good at answering questions about biology or microbiology, but when it came to that section, which tends to be more artistic, if you will, so if you're in art or sculpting and understand 3 dimensions and how to manipulate something in your mind, that's kind of where they struggled. So if you're looking to get into the dental field, that score actually is really very important to your success to getting into an interview and being considered as a candidate for dental school. They need to know that you understand how to do that in your mind. But MCAT and DAT are really very similar tests, although the MCAT has several other sections that intimidate me.
Real quick, while we're on that topic, someone had asked about what our average GPAs and MCAT are. So for KCOM, and the same is true for SOMA, our DO program in Arizona, our average GPAs are about 3.6 cumulative and about 3.5 science. So we're looking for scores for GPAs around there. If you're higher, that's great. If you're lower, usually you're good up and until you get below 3.3, then kind of red flaggish. It's not totally, but because we do give credit for the competitiveness or the ranking of the undergrad school that you came to as well. So there are a lot of different factors in there, but average GPA about 3.6 cumulative, 3.5 science. Average MCAT, so we don't have an average for the new exam yet, because once we get this next class filled, then we'll know what their averages are. We'll have a little bit more data, but for right now, the only average I can report to is for the old exam. So the average is 27. Our threshold was about a 24, so we would advise applicants if you scored below a 24, then you want to consider retaking it. It's going to be a lot more difficult to get an interview with below a 24 than if you're 24 or above, but 27 was our average. For the new exam, again, we don't have an average, but we're looking for scores of 500 or above. So, right now, if you have a 500, you stand a better chance at getting an interview than if you score 499 or below. And so again, after we fill this next class, we'll have more and better data on the next class that came in and where they were really standing. Some of them are still going to have old exam scores. Some of them will have taken the new test. So our stats are probably going to be really wonky. We're going to have a lot of different reporting methods, but that's kind of what we're looking for right now. For dental school, the average GPAs are about 3.4 cumulative and about 3.3 science. The average GAT is the academic average. The average of the academic average is an 18. Our threshold is about a 16. So again, if you score below a 16, then we recommend that you consider retaking it. So, other questions? So the Still Scholars program, if you're interested in the Still Scholars program, so the Still Scholars program is an early acceptance type program for college sophomores. So by the time you're finishing up your sophomore year, you have to have a 3.4 cumulative and science GPA. You have to have at least 3/4 of all of our prerequisites already completed. And the Still Scholars program is for early acceptance into our DO program, just here at the Missouri campus for KCOM. So you have to have a 3.4 GPA. You have to have 3/4 of the prerequisites already taken, which is a year of general biology, a year of general chemistry, a year of organic chemistry, a year of physics, and then a year of English. And all of that information can be found on our website. You have to have 3/4 of those done. You should already have shadowing hours. You should already have volunteering and a lot of great aspects that make a full application. The application for the Still Scholars program is not through that application cycle because you're actually 2 years early. So it's an application just through us on our website. You'll do the application, you'll send in your transcripts, you'll send in letters of recommendation as well. And so if you're offered an interview for the Still Scholars program and you're accepted in the Still Scholars program, what you do is you work with us on professional development, Facebook discussions, you do a book review, you're talking with our current medical students and interacting with them via Facebook and email. And you can actually gain acceptance into our DO program without having to take the MCAT. And so the last 2 years of your undergrad are kind of just more enjoyable, and you're working with us, and you don't have to prep for the MCAT. The one kicker, though, is that we ask that you remain exclusive to us. So you only apply to KCOM. You withhold all other applications to other medical schools until you get a formal decision from us. So if you are accepted in the Still Scholars program, your junior year and your senior year, you're just working with us, doing those things I already talked about. You're continuing your shadowing. In your senior year, you'll do a pre-matriculation interview, which is a second interview right before you start medical school. And we're making sure that you're still on track. Your grades haven't dropped, your GPA hasn't dropped, you haven't just fallen off the wagon and don't care anymore, and you've stopped shadowing and all of these things. We're making sure you're still doing all the things that you were doing. You can actually gain acceptance into the DO program without having to take the MCAT. Now, if for some reason you have fallen off the wagon and you don't do well in your interview and your grades have dropped and all those things, then you'd be open to applying to other schools. But no, the Still Scholars Early Acceptance Program, that application is not through ACOMAS. ACOMAS is just during your senior year when you're getting ready to apply to hopefully start medical school in the following year. Undergraduate activities. What activities were you guys involved in during undergrad?
Let's see. Okay, I graduated in May of 2014. I was really big into student government. That was one of the main things that I did. I was also an orientation leader. I love doing that. So the new students came to campus. It's sort of like what we do with ambassadors here. And then I was involved with activities that I guess could be considered more like closer to healthcare. So I was involved in Dance Marathon, which is sort of a fundraising thing to raise money for University of Iowa Children's Hospitals and Clinics. And then I was really involved in, they call it Unified Sports Day. So it was working with the Special Olympics. So I did that. I would say those were my big four.
I'll just comment. I think I wasn't as involved in a lot of things. I concentrated on a few, but I was involved in them from the start for like 4 or 5 years. So I think that's typically what admissions looks at, something that you're really invested in. They don't care if you do 10 things or 3, but they want to know that those 3 you're really invested in and you chose them for a reason. I was an athlete in undergrad, so I didn't have a lot of time during pretty much undergrad. So I did a lot of the things, the extracurricular things after school. I worked in a hospital and got my clinical experience as a scribe, which is a great opportunity. I also got my nursing assistant's license in Illinois and did that for a little bit. I worked with some children with the Jacqueline's Foundation and did a few other service activities, but I mean, you could list them off, but I think if you have 2 or 3 that are really important to you, I think that's probably the best.
Yeah. When I was an undergrad, I did volunteering activities largely through my church, and then through the local hospital there in Tucson, doing things to prep for professional school. I was also involved in, my own personal hobbies like photography. I'm kind of an unusual candidate for school. I didn't come straight out of academics. I actually had some time off between graduating undergrad and getting into dental school. So I was trying to start up a few businesses and tried my hand in a few things that way. And honestly, I think it actually made me stand out on my application in a certain way because I had some different life experiences that made me a peculiar candidate, if you will.
And on both of our campuses, we have a lot of non-traditional students. Sorry to call you non-traditional. Like Dave. Because non-traditional students bring just as much to the table as someone who has known from day one that they want to be a dentist or a physician. So life experiences carry a lot of weight. So there was a question about what tips can you give us that help you pass your required test? Was that about, can someone comment on that? Was that about the MCAT and DAT that we've already talked about, or is that more focused on boards? We'll have limited input on boards, but you guys might have some stuff to say. We talked about the average DAT, MCAT, GPA. All right, so do you have time at AT still for recreational activities? Do you have intramural sports or a running club? So we have lots. Okay, and the one was already covered. So extracurricular activities here on campus, intramurals.
Tons of good stuff going on here. I liked, when I came here for my interview, I was really impressed with their gym and their extracurricular facilities here. They have classes for just about anything you could want, whether it be powerlifting, CrossFit, yoga, spin. They really have just about anything here. And then they do lots of stuff out at the lake too, from what I understand, canoeing and kayaking and hiking trips. And yeah, there's so much to do here, and there is time. Granted, you're in professional school, you do have to buckle down and study when it is required, but you also have to manage your time well so that you can make those times for yourself to go out and be active and pursue your hobbies and do the things that you like to do. It keeps you sane.
Yeah, we have a wonderful community center here. I actually do work study there. So I've gotten to know a lot of the people that teach all the classes. So it's a lot of students or student family members that teach the classes. I personally teach the CrossFit classes that you were talking about, which is great. It's new. We just got tons of new equipment. I know they teach spin, like you were saying. We also, Katie can comment on this. She does a bunch of the intramurals. We have intramural volleyball. We have basketball. We have soccer. We have ultimate frisbee. We have pretty much anything you'd ever want. We do have a running club. I know we have a bunch of people that cycle as well, especially on the weekends. I would say everyone here is active in some sort of way, whether it be they're outside walking, photography, biking. We have a triathlon in the fall that I actually did, which was really fun. But a bunch of students do that. We have 5Ks at least once a month that our community center helps put on with a bunch of other organizations on campus. So there are a ton of things to do. I wish we had more time. We have plenty of time to do the things that we want to do, again, to keep us sane, to keep you connected within the community as well. I wouldn't worry about it so much. You just have to kind of figure out what your schedule is like and plan what you like to do around it.
Yeah, I guess kind of going off that, it's like the do you have time? There's no really such thing as free time. There's always something that you could be doing that's related to school, but we make time for the things that are important to us. We make time to go work out things that make us well-rounded, that keep us sort of, a little bit from going insane. They keep us grounded. They remind us that there's a world outside of school. And so I would say, like, I've been trying to work out more. I go to some of Brittany's classes, so I'll make time 3 to 4 times a week. You go to the gym and it is your time, or I'll play intramural sports. And I just think it's a good way to balance out your day. It's a good way to schedule your day. That really helps me. So do you have time? Like, it's sort of like technically no, but yes, you have time.
There's I think one thing that makes us a great institution is that we have a program, it's an initiative on campus called the Stillwell program. And it's for all of our students to remember that they are their own first patient. And so, yes, they're in medical school. Yes, they're in dental school. Yes, they go to class full time, and then they have studying after that, and then they have to fit in some sleep somewhere, and families if they have them, and significant others, and calling mom and dad, and all these things they have to make time for. But the Stillwell program really focuses on making that time. So taking care of yourself, making sure you're getting enough rest, making sure that you are finding 30 minutes, an hour, however much you want, to go work out or burn off some steam. You need some other things to focus some time and energy on instead of just stressing about school all the time and focusing on studying all the time. You'll get burnt out very quickly. And so the Stillwell program covers all aspects of being healthy while you're in professional healthcare school. So, and that's just kind of our culture here at ATSU. There's a huge emphasis on health and wellness. Me as a staff member, I have a Stillwell program that I go through. It's pretty much the same as the students, but we do fitness assessments twice a year. So it kind of keeps you in check and reminds you in the middle of January that the holidays were rough on you. I wish they would pick another time to do that, but I think that's a huge talking point for our university as a whole, is that there is a focus on, especially being a professional student and having so much thrown at you that you have to make sense of and find time for, but also making sure that you are being as healthy as you can while doing so. All right, girls, why osteopathic medicine? Why DO?
That's a really good question. I'll start off with that. I actually got my master's, so I'm a little bit of a non-traditional student as well. I got my master's in kinesiology and did my thesis using an ultrasound. And so kind of all the osteopathic principles I really liked them. They kind of interested me. And so when I started doing my research and thinking about manipulative medicine, it was something that I think really has a place in who I want to be as a physician. So I think I was just drawn to DO more than I was to other professional schools. And I think coming here really sealed it for me. And especially ATSU at KCOM here, I really felt like it was a family. And like Amanda was saying, when they talk about wanting a whole applicant and somebody with who's personable, who can talk to you, who has a good bedside manner, that's who your colleagues are here, and that's who you meet when you're doing your interviews. And that's really what I ultimately loved about it. I loved OMM. I loved learning about it. I loved the whole body aspect of it. I don't know if you want to.
Well, sort of a similar thing. I heard about DOs when I was a sophomore in college. We actually had a panel of MDs and DOs for our undergrad, and we were able to ask them questions about the differences. And I remember coming away from that meeting with a really just like great introduction to DOs, and I started looking into it more. My dad's actually an MD, so a little bit of competition in the family stuff. But I remember going to him and talking to him about it, and he like only had good things to say about the DOs that he worked with. The DOs that I shadowed were pretty influential on me. But the main thing that I love about the whole DO philosophy is the mind, body, spirit. So treating the person as a whole. And that really resonated with me even when I was going through undergrad. I decided I wanted to be the type of person and the type of physician that looked at a person and didn't just see a disease. So that was sort of like the main line of thought that kept me going to a DO school.
Yeah, I will comment that if you haven't had the opportunity to shadow with a DO, I think it would be a wonderful opportunity. I don't think we require it in our application process. But
some schools do.
Some schools do, we don't. Yeah. But I thought it was a wonderful experience, and it's part of the reason I started doing my own research on osteopathic schools.
So we don't require you to have DO exposure when you're applying, but it does help your competitiveness. But we do take into consideration where some people live, there aren't a lot of DOs yet. There are still pockets around the U.S. where there isn't a DO school, and so there's not a lot of DOs around there. For instance, I went to Nebraska in 2014 to recruit, and the schools were so excited to have me there. And I talked to one advisor, and she really was down to earth and honest in telling me that a lot of parents in Nebraska don't know about osteopathic medicine, and therefore they don't encourage their kids to go into osteopathic medicine because there aren't DOs there. There's not a DO school in Nebraska, so there's just a lot of unknowns about it. But osteopathic medicine and allopathic medicine are much more alike than most people realize. I mean, DOs and MDs practice side by side. They both go through undergrad. They both go through 4 years of medical school. They both do clinical rotations. They both set for licensure exams and go through residencies. Both can specialize or go into primary care. And so as a DO, you're not held back in any way. If anything, you have the upper hand because you're actually taught to use your hands to treat and diagnose your patients. So you have an extra tool in your toolbox called brain glitch, called osteopathic manipulative medicine, where you can use your hands to treat and diagnose your patients. So that's something that MDs don't learn during medical school. Now, I believe there are some programs that MDs can go through now to learn more of those concepts, but DOs and DO schools hit on that so tremendously hard during the 4 years that you're in medical school that it's like second nature. So they're much more similar than what most people think. Not gonna lie, I lost my train of thought on what I was going for there. But so how do students pay for medical school? Every student scenario, touchy, scary subject. Every student scenario is different, and I explain it to students, that some of you guys might have a nice savings account waiting for you to get into professional school that's going to help pay your living expenses while you go to school full time. Some of you, by the time you get to professional school, will have a spouse or significant other that's going to be moving with you that is going to be working full time and help contribute to the household expenses. And some of you, sorry, we lost our, some of you are simply going to be taking out student loans. So there are programs out there that you can apply to that offer loan forgiveness and loan payback for years of service, and usually it's underserved populated areas. But those, I'm not an expert on those. I don't know all of the programs. They all have different requirements. Financial aid departments can help you a lot more. But for the most part, students are taking out additional student loans to live on. Our financial aid department is very good working with students on the student budget and reminding them that, you're a student, so you want to make sure you're living like a student. You don't want to take out a lot more than what you're actually going to need, because once you graduate, you are going to be paying back these student loans. So the goal is to live like a student while you're a student, so that once you're a practicing dentist or a practicing physician or PA or PT, whatever, you can actually enjoy your higher salary and not still have to continue to live like a student because you're paying back all of this extra money that you took out that maybe you didn't really need to take out all of it. But they put together a student budget because we want you to be comfortable. We want you to have a roof over your head. You need to have food on your table, gas in your car, heating and air conditioning, car insurance, health insurance, and so they allow you to take out those extra funds. But they do really counsel you to be very careful when you're doing that because you are going to have to pay them back for the most part. Any tidbits you guys want to add?
I would just say, while you're young, learn how to budget. Like, I've seen plenty of my classmates and other of my peers that have not been so judicious in the way that they spend their loan money, and it comes to bite them at the end of a semester or at the end of a year. So be wise. Learn to budget. Learn to live below your means. Really, your means aren't much. You're living off of loans. It's not your money.
Yeah, I guess it's a daunting figure when you first look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm taking out this much in student loans. It's I try not to think about it honestly most days because it is pretty stressful. I guess I think of it as it's an investment in you. It's an investment in your career. You will be able to pay it back. People pay it back all the time and live very happy lives. So yeah, we pay for it, we get it done, we'll pay it back, and then we won't think about it again.
Yeah, I think you do need to be frugal about your money, especially in professional school. But I would also add that don't be ashamed to take out loans. I think there's like 90-some% of us on some sort of aid. So don't be afraid of it. Get help, go to financial aid, and they'll help you figure it out.
The good part is I don't hear the figure often, but within the last couple of years, I heard about our default rate, our loan default rate. So our student loan default rate is like less than 1%. So our students are doing well in school, they're graduating, they're passing boards, they're getting employment, and they're able to pay back their student loans. So it's a lot of money, but our students have proven that they are getting placed in great jobs and they're able to pay it back. How many students are accepted to the DO program as well as still scholars each year? So the DO program at the Missouri campus has 172 spots in the class. It's kind of deceiving though because there's 172 spots, but over the interview cycle, we will offer more than 250 acceptances because people that get accepted may still end up going somewhere else. They'll go closer to home. Maybe we weren't their top choice. And so they'll be accepted and they'll give up their spot. And so we'll accept someone else. So there's a lot of turnover in the acceptances and the fillings of the class. But there are 172 spots that will be filled, 172 students who will start each July. The Still Scholars program doesn't have a cap, I don't believe, on how many we accept into it, but when I started 5.5 years ago, there were like 2 Still Scholars, and then there was a class of like 6 Still Scholars. But right now, we've had anywhere from 12 to 16 Still Scholars that are accepted into the program each year. So we don't have a cap. If you're not accepted, chances are you still need to work on strengthening your application. It's not that it's been filled and there's not any spots open yet or left.
And there's the dental program each year.
Yeah. So the dental program has 42 spots at the Missouri campus here. Once we graduate our first class, which will be in 2017, thank you, then we will be able to apply for full accreditation. Right now we have initial accreditation, which is the most we can have being a new school. Once we graduate our first class, then we'll be able to apply for full accreditation, and that's where they'll look at the graduating class, how they did, board rates and things like that. And so if we get in full accreditation, we will be able to grow that 42. I don't think it'll grow substantially, but it will grow a little bit. Our Arizona dental program has 76 in their entering class, and the Arizona DO program has 107. So here in Missouri, 172 for DO, 42 for dental. Arizona campus, 107 for DO and 76 for dental. Does the dental school offer any specialties?
Currently, we do not. Again, as Amanda mentioned, we're still under initial accreditation processes right now. So we are limited to just the DMD general dentistry track. But I would say it's probably safe to say they'll add certificates and other programs in years to come. They've had a lot of success at the Arizona campus, and they have their own specialty programs. I believe they have a master's in public dentistry and public health, and as well as a certificate in orthodontics.
There's an orthodontics residency.
A residency,
as well.
that's right. Yes,
at Arizona.
At Arizona. So yeah, AT Still University is very progressive in adding new programs that benefit the students in the dental track.
And if some of you are wondering, just for clarification, so when you go into medical school, you graduate medical school and you have to go into residency. You'll go through 3 to 5 years generally, I think, of residency, depending on what specialty that you are going for. And the more specialized you are, the more schooling you're going to go through. But so once you graduate, you still have to go through residency for whatever specialty, no matter what. For dental, once you graduate, you are a general dentist. You don't have to go. Well, after 4 years, you're a dentist. You don't have to go into residency. But if you want to be an oral surgeon or orthodontics, things like that, then you will go into residency after graduation. So yes, our Arizona campus does offer an orthodontics residency. Right now on the Missouri campus, it's just the DMD degree, and then our dental students also graduate with a certificate of public health or a certificate in public health, and they can actually go through our College of Graduate Health Studies to turn that certificate of public health into a master's of public health, but not any dental specialties here on the Missouri campus for right now. How many apply each year? So thousands. I don't know the exact numbers, and it's changed since I saw the stats last, but we'll get over 2,000-3,000 applications for our programs. So it's very competitive. There are a lot of applications to sort through. It's very important that you apply as early as you can. So when the cycle opens, if you can get your application going within a month or two of when it first opens, you're going to be at a higher advantage than someone who's applying later. Because when you apply early, then the application service isn't bogged down yet, so they can process your application quicker and get it onto the schools. Once we get it, we can send you out the secondary application, and when you get that back to us quickly, then your file can be reviewed quicker because we're not bogged down by reviewing applications. Once we review your application, then it goes to an admissions a pre-screen committee, and they make the decision on whether or not to offer an interview. So if you're at the head of the line, then there are more interview spots available, and it doesn't make it like crazy less competitive, but it's a little less competitive because the whole class is still filled. So you're not down to like 5 spots that are only going to go to the highest most competitive applicants. So you stand a better chance of getting an interview. And so then when you interview, it's earlier, so there's going to be a quicker turnaround. So hopefully by for medical school, you could find out as early as November if you're accepted. Now for dental school, there are different traffic rules where we can't offer acceptances for dental school prior to December 1st. So you may start interviewing in October, but you are not going to hear anything until December 2nd. But either way, knowing whether you're in or not before Christmas makes for a better Christmas. What's the difference between DMD and DDS?
That is a good question.
Virtually nothing.
There's absolutely no difference.
Like there's not a difference in the philosophy. It's all the same.
I think historically, Harvard was actually the first school to offer the DMD degree, and legend has it Harvard being Harvard decided to make the DMD degree. There is absolutely no didactic difference, no clinical difference. We do exactly the same stuff. Yeah. It's just letters.
So our Missouri dental program was based off of our Arizona campus program directly. I mean, it's very much the same program, just at 2 different schools or 2 different locations. So maybe for some reason the Arizona ASDO just decided, hey, we want to be the Harvard, hey, like Harvard. Sure. I don't know, but they're all the same. Yes. So any other questions before we wrap up? And you guys can always send questions. You can call our office. You can send questions to admissions. Let me see if I can type on this Apple. I'm not an Apple person. You can email questions that you have. If you have further questions for current students and student ambassadors, you can email this email address, and I will get you in touch with a student ambassador that can further answer any questions that you have. But we'll give, how many get accepted for an interview? It depends on the program and how many seats are in the program. So like for DO, there's a lot more seats than for dental. And so it just depends on what program you're applying for. But generally, I mean, it's in the hundreds. We do hundreds of interviews. Dental, I think, is closer to like 300 or around there. DO is more around 500 to 600. So again, the DO program is bigger, so we do more interviews. So that's, you know, and again, your application looking good on paper, having strong GPAs, having strong MCAT or DAT, having that clinical exposure, extracurriculars, being that well-rounded applicant, having good letters of recommendation, having strong personal statements, that is what will help you get the interview. And so, you know, then once you're notified of an interview, and before you're notified of an interview, actually start mock interviews so that you're comfortable with that setting. So, and when you go to a mock interview, wear your suit that you would plan on wearing to the interview, because you want to make sure that you're not too hot, that you're comfortable. We don't want pants too tight. We don't want skirts too short. You want to make sure that you're comfortable. You pretend like it is a legit interview and get that practice, because that'll make a world of difference, especially if you're not an outgoing person. If you are someone who's a little bit more shy or more timid, you need to work on those skills so that you'll interview strongly.
I might add to that. I think a lot of applicants, when they go into an interview, will wholeheartedly say, I botched my first interview, because they weren't prepared for the questions, they weren't prepared for the environment. I did. Absolutely botched my first interview, and I felt terrible because I knew I could have done better. So highly encourage you to take advantage of any mock interview scenarios that you can go through. It will be a big benefit to you. Could be the school that you want to get into.
Any last questions before we wrap up? I don't think so. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for having us. Again, our email is on there. You can also contact the AHEC offices. But, you know, the main thing you can do is just do your research or be prepared, know what to expect, know what schools are looking for, get your feet wet in the field so that you can build that strong application, and so that you know if that field is really for you or not. Because getting direct patient care is what will either make you realize, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do, or oh wow, no, I don't want to do this. So either way, it's a great learning experience. So thank you.